Welcome to the Catwalk and Merry Christmas. I'm your host, Jay Whitlow, missional entrepreneur and storyteller. For over the past 20 years, I have served from the oil field to the mission field with a lot of stops in between, hanging out with some top leaders and professionals through a variety of industries. Today, I sit behind this mic on a personal journey to share stories from people right here in the Permian Basin. Each week, you will hear from some heavy-hitting leaders and entrepreneurs about their biggest wins, heartbreaking losses, and even some of life's little secrets. One thing I have learned is that storytelling is powerful, and behind every person is a story to tell. So join me as I dive into today's conversation here on the Catwalk.
From the PCC studios in Midland, it's the Catwalk, presented by Performance Chemical. Conversations connecting with industry executives, community leaders, nonprofit organizations, and social entrepreneurs.
The Catwalk is presented by Performance Chemical Company. At Performance Chemical, they understand a chemical service provider can offer so much more than just quality products. To add true value to their programs, the focus is on consistent service. Reach out to Performance Chemical today at perf-chem.com. I'm so excited today to welcome my very special guest, the Vice President of Engineering at Admiral. This is my good friend, Tyler West.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Tyler, how are you?
Good.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
So glad you're here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, to you as well.
Yeah. So I want our listeners and viewers to kind of get a glimpse of who you are. So start us from the very beginning. This is kind of your elevator pitch of who you are from when you were born to today.
Yeah, born and raised in Midland to a family that was originally from Midland as well. My parents spent a number of years off and moved back kind of right about just a couple of years before I was born. So kind of grew up in the Midland area. Went to college at A&M and had met my future bride a year or two before in high school. So high school sweethearts.
Okay.
I left, went to A&M. She left, went to Texas State. Later on, a couple of years later in college, we got married. And I think at that time, I probably swore I'd never move back to Midland.
That happens.
We moved off, went and spent a little bit of time in Oklahoma, working there. Moved back to Dallas, working for an oil company in the Dallas area. And then when we started having kids, we had our first one in 2012, Carter.
Okay.
About the time he was a year old, we started getting the itch to move back to Midland. It had kind of an allure to us just to have kids back close to grandparents and family.
Right.
And so about the time he was one, we moved back to Midland. And I went to work for Reliance Energy. Worked there until the company sold to Concho in 2016. And at that time, there was a group of us at Reliance that left and started Admiral Permian kind of in the early 2017 timeframe and been there ever since. Along the way, we had another son in 2014 and journeyed through foster care and ultimately adopted twins out of foster care in 2017. So at present, we've got 4 kids. They're now 11, 9, and twin 6-year-olds.
And you're very busy.
Very busy.
With them.
Very busy.
Yeah.
So I as it stands tonight recording, I get the night off. So.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm working, and you get the night off, so that's awesome. So I want to back up a second because you said you went to A&M.
Yep.
Okay, so what year was that?
That was 2005 to 2009.
Was their football team good then?
No, we were a basketball school.
You were a basketball school at that time, right?
School.
Okay. Had y'all moved over to the SEC yet at that time?
No, we were still Big 12.
Okay. Are you a big sports fan?
We were at all the events.
You were all the events. Okay.
Yeah.
Were you in the Corps or anything, or?
No.
No.
But big respect for those guys because there was a fair amount of them in engineering classes, and those guys, man, you talk about grueling schedules, hard dedication.
Right.
Those guys were hardcore.
They are hardcore. Now, I've got a lot of Aggie friends, and we argue about this all the time. It's kind of a cult, right? The whole A&M thing. So you married your bride, your fiance, girlfriend, but she didn't go to A&M, right?
So we had to get her into the cult first.
Okay, so
she transferred from Texas State, ended up going to A&M.
Okay.
We got married going into our last year of school. So we got married in August of 2008.
Okay.
A week later, went back to school for our last year, and then graduated the following August.
Now, is it true that you can't like walk on some grass that's there
There-
on campus?
yes.
Tell me that little part.
Okay, so right around the Memorial Student Center,
Okay.
it's a memorial for fallen Aggies that have gone off to war and passed.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So, it's a real thing then, right?
Yeah, but it's a
not-
tighter area than people think. Yeah,
really.
yeah.
It's not like a.
No,
Football
it's
field
just like
long,
the
or-
grass strips right off of the Memorial Student
What
Center.
happens if I was to go there and walk across the
Yeah,
grass?
it's like lava. You die.
Really?
No,
It's
no,
like lava?
No, people politely ask you to get off the
Just
grass.
get off the grass.
And same thing,
the
like
old
when
man.
when you walk in the building, you take off your hat out of respect for.
Oh wow!
the
I would not do well there because I
Yeah.
don't like to take my hat off
Yeah.
anywhere. So, okay, so you guys you got married there, and then you kind of moved around. So, what was the? I think you said there was that itch or something that made you want to come back here. What was that? Can you really identify what that was?
Yeah, it was an itch to be closer to family. Bonnie is from here. My wife is from
Right.
here. My parents were still here. Her brother had just moved back a year or two before. And I think we just started assessing what were our values in life, what did we want out of our lives, and it was really high on our list to be close to family.
Yeah.
And for our kids to know their grandparents. So that's what really prompted
So that's
our
what it
move back.
was. Yeah. Oh, so what do you do at Admiral?
Yeah.
What's your role there?
So I oversee some of our business development effort, really kind of underwriting and trying to figure out which wells to drill, which wells not to drill, the economics behind it, kind of oversee really asset development, just really kind of when you get a lease, how do you go about drilling wells, which intervals do you develop, can you do it all at once? Do you have enough capital to go do it all at once, or do you need to break it up into different tranches, or how do you marry deployment of capital with risk of
Okay.
a project?
Did you do the same type of role at, was it Reliance?
No, really. In the company I worked for in Dallas, I was doing more operations, so working with field guys on enhancing production, keeping cost in line. And then in the Reliance days, we were really tasked with, hey, manage the project outside of drilling wells. So
Okay.
we did all the completion designs, managed long-term production, minimizing failures,
Right.
that kind of thing.
What part of Dallas did you live in?
We lived in North Dallas.
North Dallas. Okay.
So we lived
that
in
would've been-
Frisco.
Frisco. Okay. And what years was
That was 2009 to
9? Okay, so it was
2013.
hopping. Frisco
It was
hopping
busy.
there.
It
I
was-
lived there before it became. I mean, before there was a mall.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like a big giant field.
It was substantially different then, and I'm sure it's substantially different
Yeah.
now, 10 years later. After
Yeah, it's
after we
crazy. So
left.
your journey from Reliance to Midland was as you looked at your family and you wanted to move closer to your family and
Correct.
stuff. Are they still here?
Yeah, and since that time, I've got 3 brothers.
They all live here.
All of them have moved back for different varying circumstances. So our entire family lives within about a 5-mile radius
Right.
of us.
Right. Now you mentioned something about you working with fostering.
Correct.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. God, what year was it, Jay? It was probably 2000. We moved back in 2013.
Right.
Gavin was born 2014, and somewhere along the way, we had a family situation that we had to really kind of wrestle with ourselves over. Would we take this specific family member's kids in? And it was a distant relative, but Bonnie and I looked at each other and thought, I think we could handle it. That situation never came to pass, and then and I don't remember the chain of events, but we had a close family member foster, and we watched them do it and thought, gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We would never do anything like that. Had some other friends foster, and really go through a rough situation, and it confirmed, like, nope, never doing that ever. And honestly, the Lord just softened our hearts along the way, that it was kind of like, you know what, we got open space. We like having kids in the house. Our boys were 3 and 1. And so we dabbled our toe in it in probably 2015, 2016.
Right.
Got licensed to foster and had a couple young girls, one and under basically. So we were kind of in that like window where we wanted young kids in the house. And the intent of why we got into fostering was let's see if this is the way that we are, you know, maybe God's calling us to grow our family this way instead of having a third kid. So yeah, we fostered three young babies, and then in 2018 brought the twins home, and then ended up adopting them a year later.
Are they from this area?
Yeah.
Are they? Now, was it you or your wife who made that initial decision to do that? Was one of you kind of lagging behind a little bit?
She was much more responsive to
She was
fostering.
responsive.
Oh, and I was.
How did she win you over then? Or was it a win over kind of thing?
She was super patient with me. I think she felt called long before I did. I think I am methodical in decision making, and I was hiding behind that of no, let's just think about it. Let's think about it. And I'm not even sure what the decision point was for me. But yeah, there was probably 6 months to a year where I think she was ready to move forward with it, and I was hesitant. But obviously she
What's
won
been
me
the
over.
most rewarding thing about taking that step toward fostering?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. I can remember. I'll go through a couple of them because as I think through the individual placements that we had, we learned a lot through each of the placements. The first one was, you get into it and you think you're saving a kid from maybe a bad family situation.
Right.
And so it's kind of this subconscious us versus them kind of mentality. Like us versus the parents, the biological parents who,
You're going to rescue them.
I'm rescuing
the
them.
savior
You haven't done any good. You've screwed up. And we got into it and realized, there has been longstanding, abuse or psychological issues that the parents have dealt with since they were kids. And so they're just in a cycle of trauma and don't know how to get out of it themselves. So we saw that. We figured out, no, the redemption in this is not in us saving a baby. The redemption is the parents are able to climb out of cycles of addiction or abuse and to climb on top of it and to get their kids back from a system that it's tough. It's tough when kids enter CPS care for parents to do all the things that they need to do. It's not impossible, but a parent has to get their head on straight quickly. And if they don't, the cards get stacked against them. And CPS wants to, their first objective is to reunify kids, but it's difficult when you're battling drug addiction. And so my wife spent hours on the phone with the mom of the first placement we had, almost in a counseling role. And spent, she would call at 2 a.m, just hysterical.
The mom of
the baby that we had.
Babies,
And so there was a learning point for us of, okay, this is more than just the kid. This is family, and it's our responsibility to step into that if we can. That was the first placement. The second placement was similar in some regards, just around drug addiction and long-standing drug use. And there was a moment where we thought we were going to adopt the little girl that was with us. And in what felt like the 11th hour, CPS came to us and told us, nope, we're going to place her back home. And everything in that decision felt wrong. It felt like CPS was being negligent or flippant with a baby's life. She was one. And in hindsight, they made the right decision. We know that now, but in the moment, it felt we felt betrayed a little bit, and we feared for the little girl that was in our custody. And I'm not a violent person. I'm not an angry person, but I remember wanting to go across the table at this CPS worker who was just delivering bad news to us, but she was delivering great news to the parents.
Wow.
And she was young. She was a couple of years out of college, I think. And it was a pivotal point for me when I recognized, man, CPS workers have a hard job. Every day is hard, no matter the circumstances, right? Like for her, she was immediately leaving our house and going to visit with the parents, and she was going to tell them, hey, you're getting your kids back.
Right.
So she leaves a conversation with the foster parent, and I'm about to come across the table at her.
Right.
And it was just
I would probably be the same way.
It was a point for me where I was like, oh man, they have hard jobs. That actually launched us into like a year or two later, working on some initiatives to basically help CPS. It's honestly what landed us at starting Fostering Restoration in part years later, and I think we'll get there in a little while. But it was a moment where I distinctly remember my gut just getting turned upside down, and it fueled part of our effort years later to assist CPS and to really kind of pour into CPS workers.
Right. I want to unpack a couple things there because there's a lot of things in that story illustration. So one is you said, hey, we're rescuing the child. It feels like that, but it's more of helping the parents too and walking through that. I think that would be a great representation of the gospel of how you're reaching out and sharing love with both of those. You're taking in that child, it seems like away from that parent, but you're giving them the space that they need to get their life back together so that they can be what God has called them to be or created them to be, and maybe in that child's life to be back in as a parent, or maybe not. Maybe it's to give them the space just to kind of figure out life. But what was it when you said, because I see a lot of me and you on I've had moments when we were in adoption. We've never fostered, but we've adopted where, the adoption fell through and I wanted to reach across and punch somebody in the throat because they took that away from us. We were wanting to do this. We felt like this was God's call for us, and then the door was shutting there as well. So how did you work through that anger that you said you weren't an anger person, but how did you work through that to where you had to rely on maybe the Spirit to calm you down in that situation?
I don't know. I mean, I think when she left, I think Bonnie and I were both crushed, and it took a little bit of time. What ended up coming out of that, though, was you can pull this. I'm an engineer by background, so you can pull data from the FPS, Department of Family Protective Services.
Right.
It's all published online, and you can look at turnover rates of CPS workers. And I want to say it's like somewhere like 40-50% turnover or something crazy. Yeah. So we started working with companies. The idea was, and I can't remember how this came up. I think I was talking to a CPS worker like, hey, the oil field culture is very much like if you go out and you visit a rig or, frac site, there's companies that take their cook trailers out and cook for companies all the time. It's like, what if we came and did that for you guys? And they were like, you guys would do that? And it's like, yeah, I think we could do that. So for probably the better part of 2018, 2019, every month we were in Odessa or Midland, and the idea was, let's get a cook trailer over there and let's cater a meal to CPS workers.
Wow.
The idea was,
that's a brilliant idea.
I can't I guess, minister to CPS workers one-on-one. I just don't have that kind of platform. But maybe we can influence CPS culture by just being a positive influence from the outside. So, yeah, for probably a couple dozen times we would go and cater meals. When we couldn't cater meals, we would bring in pizzas. The idea was, let's get corporations around town introduced to the problem, introduced to CPS workers. Let's be a positive light to CPS, and provide a place where, if they need to meet, if they need to do some training, we can do that with a free meal. So COVID killed that eventually.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Once COVID happened, it was like, wow, we can't. They all dispersed and they were working from home, so we haven't done it since. But
now, did your love for fostering, did that open the door for fostering restoration that you're part of? And how did that land in your lap?
It was my wife again.
It's always the wives,
dude.
isn't
She's my hero.
Yeah.
She toured a property on kind of the northwest side of Midland that had been in ministry previously,
Right.
and for some different reasons had closed down. And at the time was vacant. She walked through it, and I think immediately was like, "Oh, we're supposed to do something here." Again, it was probably 3 or 4 months of me resisting it,
Right.
coming up with every reason in the book why it wouldn't make sense. We were in basically our dream home. The kids were growing.
Right.
We had just adopted the twins, and it was after the adoption of the twins that it was kind of like, well, what's next for us?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like we went through the stories of learning to jump in the foxhole with parents for us just to quit.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like we had gone through the stories with CPS and trying to cater to them and mentor them and minister to them. It didn't feel like we had done all of these things and seen all of these things just to adopt and quit.
Right.
It almost felt like it would have been a sin just to be done. We got our objectives. Our objective was to raise our family. We got what we wanted.
You check the box.
Now
and
we're
move
done.
on. Yeah.
And that's what it felt like in that moment. So resistantly, I went out to the property, and I think we just started dreaming and praying. What could this be? We've always felt like God had ordained that space for something, and we felt like, well, let's jump in, let's steward it, and let's just see where this goes. We knew at the time, and you've interviewed Matt Waller previously, from the Attic. Matt and Jen became some friends of ours through the fostering journey.
Right.
We knew that they were prepared to launch to the next step. They at the time were working out of their home and out of storage units, supplying foster homes, supplying think like grandmas getting kids, aunts and uncles getting kids, kinship placements. So they were supplying needs there.
Yeah.
They were doing so much, but they didn't have a physical place to go. The property that we're at now has a big shop, storefront area that we thought, what, they could move in there and kind of set up a hub here. At one of the catering events that we went to, we found out kids would often sleep in the CPS office. And it was just an interior office at the CPS office. And it always just kind of rubbed us the wrong way that it felt like an injustice that kids would go and get removed from their families and then didn't even have a bed that night. And it wasn't CPS's fault.
Right.
It was just,
they just weren't prepared.
Well, they just didn't have a better option. So they would often just emergency place kids inside their offices. And then it was around the clock care. CPS workers were working overnight, staying at their office, sitting outside the office. Kids
they had to supervise this child.
They would just roll out an air mattress or a sleeping bag, and the kid would sleep on the floor. I took a picture of that room, kind of incognito, when I got shown this is where we keep kids, and I'll go back and visit it sometimes, because all it was just a drab interior office that didn't scream hope.
Right.
So when you put yourself in the place of a kid who just got removed, and then is expected just to sleep on the floor. It's like, man, are we just inflicting more trauma on these kids? And so we always dreamed of what we could do there. Previous to the property that we're at now, we had looked at duplexes around Midland and
Right.
thought, okay, maybe we can rent out one side, make ends meet to make it work, donate the other side to CPS. And this would have been 2017 timeframe, 2018 maybe. I mean, there was nothing. As you know, Midland
Right. Yeah.
doesn't have a plentiful amount of housing.
Right.
So we were getting crunched there. We never could make it work. So when we bought the property, we leased the shop to the attic. That's now their home base.
Right.
Immediately adjacent is an apartment that we let CPS use. They come and go. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, fully furnished, fully stocked, that they keep kids. And I think we probably had 150 kids come through in the last 5 years.
Wait, what? 150 kids went, and how long?
Probably 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah,
So you live on property.
correct.
So that time that you spoke about having your dream house.
Yep.
Y'all had to
Yeah.
dump it.
Yeah, so
Right.
so in let's think, January of 2018, I believe, we moved out to what we call the farm.
Right.
We got basically a contract in place with CPS. They started using the apartment.
Right.
The attic moved out there, and at the time it was just Bonnie and I just freelancing it basically.
Right. Yeah.
It was later on that we finally stood up a nonprofit because I think we had people coming to us and we're like, hey, love what you guys are doing. How can we help
can we
support
help?
you?
Yeah.
So we just kind of intended just to, I don't know, just
Yeah.
figure it out. So we stood up a nonprofit, called it Fostering Restoration. And yeah, have been doing it for 5 or 6 years.
Wow, I'm blown away by how many kids have been through there, and some have stayed for what, like just a weekend or a night, but some have stayed longer than that. What's the longest that you've had maybe somebody stay there?
Yeah, you're right. No, it ranges from a couple hours if they just need to get a bath and a meal
Wow.
and move on to, we've had some kids stay for 6 weeks, 2 months.
Wow. With a CPS
long
worker.
durations. Yeah,
Or
so
workers.
when they're there, there's
Yeah.
always 2 CPS workers, sometimes a security guard, just depending on the needs of the child. Round the clock, they work 4-hour shifts, so
Right.
through the night. One starts at midnight, goes to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, so on.
Wow. Now, the property, we won't get into the history of it, but the property was kind of, because of some circumstances that happened, was available for you guys to purchase and to then dream about what God was going to do there. If I'm not mistaken, because I've been out to the attic, I've been out to see it places, you have 1 or 2 llama alpacas, and you have other animals out there, right?
Once upon a time, hey, when was
What all's out there?
When was the freeze? Do you remember when it was frozen for like 2 weeks straight?
Yeah, it was like the Snowmageddon.
Yeah, was that January of 21?
Was it? Was it after COVID or was it
During
before
that-
COVID? It was sometime during that time frame.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
At that time, we
The
had
Snowmageddon,
At
right?
Snowmageddon,
Yeah.
we had 5 llamas on property. We had
5.
15 goats. We had 3 dozen chickens, probably.
Are you tending to all these animals? Is that part of
Unfortunately,
your-
yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And this was, we didn't intend on having that many goats and llamas. We had some friends move out to the property.
Right.
They had some llamas, so we all just threw them out together. We had half a dozen goats. They all had babies, like
Uh-oh.
3 weeks before Snowmageddon.
So you were not just fostering restoration, you were fostering
There was a moment
animals having
th-
babies out
There was a moment when we didn't have power in the house, and you go out to the stables, and we got like 2 propane heaters.
And that's where you warmed up.
Jay, that was the moment that I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
So we got through Snowmageddon, and
Wow.
at probably my insistence and to Bonnie's chagrin, we got rid of the goats. And our friends subsequently moved off and took their llamas with
You didn't
them.
just accidentally leave the gate open and they just kind of wandered off?
No.
And somebody came and got them?
Yeah, the goats, we sold them. So we
Yeah.
made a little bit of money back there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
But
was
you still have two?
two llamas.
Two llamas now.
Two llamas.
Do they have names?
They do. Yeah.
And those names are?
One is Buttermilk. One is Lucia. Yeah.
Buttermilk and what?
Lucia.
Lucia.
There's actually
Okay, so
Wait.
those are fantastic names
Yeah.
for alpaca llama.
well, we had one.
Are they really
w-
fantastic names?
Yeah. Well, we had one pass away. His name was Shoefly.
That's
Shoefly.
Shoefly.
Oh, wow.
We didn't name
Yeah,
him.
Okay.
There is a llama rescue in Kerrville,
Really?
so we went down.
There's such a thing. Llama
something
rescue.
for everybody.
Now, how old are these llamas?
Buttermilk's like 15.
Is that old?
We were told they lived to like the age of a horse. However, old.
Whoa.
They're like similar age
Yeah.
expectancy as horses.
Yeah.
So with other animals, do you get benefits from them? Like a
No.
cow, you get milk. A horse, you
No.
ride it, work with it.
I
Llamas.
know where he's going with this.
Llamas are worthless. Well, the
Wait,
reason
they're worthless?
well,
That's funny.
so we got them.
You can ride them.
I don't know. We have the goat. We had goats, and so the llamas originated because
Right.
we needed kind of a protector for goats.
So they protect the goats.
Yeah, they hang out with the goats,
So
and,
they're
and coyotes
maternal
will
and-
either like see something large and stay away, or I guess a llama would like kick a coyote if it was in the area.
Have you ever been spit on?
Yeah, I have.
By a llama.
Unintentionally.
Not another
What's funny is
person.
they won't spit at people, but
Really?
if you kind of get between them when they're fighting over food, they'll spit at you.
Like
They
if
won't
you-
spit at you; they're spitting at each other, and then
but
there's
it'll-
collateral
it'll-
damage.
Probably blow on you
Yeah.
or something like that if you poke
Yeah.
at them long enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so wow. Okay, so you do have the llamas out there because the times that I've been out to the attic, I've seen them and they
Yeah.
just stare,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, is there something wrong with this?
No.
They just staring at
They're pretty
me.
low
and
IQ animals, though, so that doesn't surprise me.
I'm like, I'm not going anywhere near
but
that.
you'd be shocked because we live on kind of a major road,
Yeah.
and so we get people all the time like, "Hey, where are your llamas?" I'm like, "They were probably just in the stables
inside
or
this
whatever."
stable or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is God teaching you right now through all of this process of fostering and CPS and running this fostering restoration and all of the things in your business, everything that you got going on?
It's funny. Well, on the personal front, I'll go back to, I referenced we had 3 little girls before we got
Right,
the twins.
right.
Our third placement was almost similar to where we are today, which is sometimes it's just you don't see the fruit of what you're doing, but it's good just to keep your head down and be diligent
Right.
and know that the Lord has called you to do something, and you won't always feel the fruit of that and the joy of that, but it's important to stay the course. That's kind of where we are today. I mean, we've been at this a long time. Our kids are getting older.
Right.
And so we are kind of in that season with fostering restoration where we are, it's just been, it's been an endurance race, to get to where we are today. And, we're just kind of in between things, seasonally where, in the early days I say we very generously, Bonnie,
Yeah.
was creating and doing and trying to figure out where holes existed in the system, kind of in just the foster care realm. And we were stepping into that. We were using resources that people were donating to us to try and figure out how to maybe make the system better. And some of that stuff is planed out. Some of it we're still doing. But we're just trying to be good stewards at this moment.
Do you feel like you've made some good strides in helping CPS workers and the system? Or do you feel like you've given to that and there's been reward there? Not just for the kids that you've taken care of, but for the CPS workers.
It's hard to know.
Do you have a relationship and visit with them?
We do to some extent.
Turnover's high.
Turnover is still very high.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some that come through that we've built some good relationships with, and it's very much like, hey, how are you? Give big hugs, and I mean, CPS workers are kind of an unsung hero in our community, and they do so much. They work tirelessly to protect kids,
Right.
and they don't always get the recognition that I would hope for. But yeah, there are some of the CPS workers that we have gotten to know are just truly heroes.
Wow. Do you, let's see, how would I ask this? If somebody was listening, watching, and wanted to support you, do you still have the nonprofit? Is there a way that they can? Do you have something set up where people can give?
Yeah. Yeah, if you feel led, I mean, Fostering Restoration, we have a website that can direct you to kind of a PayPal account or how to donate check-wise. Honestly, I think there's a lot that needs to be done in the foster care system. Foster families are desperately needed. They always are. Midland is a specifically unique town because it's a more transient population than most towns. I saw some stats on like Pecos County years ago that like Pecos County through like the 90s and early 2000s had like 2 kids in foster care. Wow. That's exploded in the last decade, as you can imagine, if you've kind of tracked what's going on inside Pecos. So there's a big need in the community for fostering. If you're like me and hesitant, I get it, but there is perpetually a need for foster families if you ever feel led to do that.
Well, we'll put on the show notes where people can get a hold of that website where they can give. This time of the year, there may be some people who want to give and want to get involved in fostering, or maybe there's somebody out there that's like you, that's like struggling a little bit with, is this the direction that we need to go? And they're having that conversation with their wife, and they're trying to get them on board, and I'd love for them to connect with you. So if that's cool, we'd love to give that connection. So I want the last few minutes that we have just kind of give you some off-the-wall, random, fire-off questions here, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. Yeah. So what's your least favorite month of the year?
Least favorite?
Yeah. And, of course, why?
Well, so immediately my mind went to weather.
Yeah.
You know, December is a pretty incredible maybe like one of the, like maybe like February, like an in-between month where there's just not a whole lot going on.
Of course, my birthday month, but that's okay. Yes. Yeah, I don't like February.
Well, not February.
Either.
I definitely didn't say February if you can cut that out. No, I mean, it's probably, February. Let's go February.
February's good.
Yeah.
If you were in a rock band, what instrument would you play?
I'd play the drums.
Do you play the drums, or would you play the drums?
No, I take that back. I do play the drums.
Okay.
If I was in a rock band, though, I'd want to play bass. Yeah.
Play bass?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Who's your favorite drummer? Do you have one? Do you have somebody that you would emulate?
Oh, there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah. Or maybe what band are they in? What?
Oh, man, do you know the Carter Buford from Dave Matthews Band?
Yeah, Dave Matthews drummer.
He's
sick.
Good choice.
He's pretty sick.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Neil Peart, but because that's what everybody says.
That's like the
Godfather.
he's good, and he's like one generation above what I listened to growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is the Godfather.
Who's the cat that plays drums that looks like Will Ferrell?
Oh, Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Are you a big Red Hot Chili Pepper fan?
Oh yeah.
So who do you listen to? Like who would be on your Spotify playlist right now? Besides Christmas music, obviously. Right now.
Well, you caught me on Chili Peppers. I don't listen to them as much now, but in my kind of like high school, college years, they were a favorite. I don't know. It's pretty eclectic.
You're all over the road.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
I do have a deep appreciation for music, so I can find something in just about any genre
So you would play bass, right? So why bass if you're already a drummer? You just want to try something different?
Try something different.
Yeah.
It's the backbone of the band in a different way.
Yeah.
So.
Have you ever owned a Blockbuster video card?
No.
No?
No.
Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know
remember them.
You're considerably younger than I am.
But by the time I got to where I was actually renting movies, Redbox had just kind of come onto the scene.
So Redbox was in your heyday.
Yeah.
Well,
I say that.
Yeah.
Blockbuster was the place to go whenever I was a kid.
But you never had your own card.
No.
Did you have a Redbox membership or card or anything?
No, I don't think there was one.
So you never had the joy of returning a movie late that wasn't rewound?
Not that I.
Do you know what I'm talking about when it's rewound?
Not that I had to pay for.
Yeah, not that you had to pay for.
Not that I had to pay for.
That was me.
Yeah, be kind, rewind.
Yes,
That's
you
what
do
they said.
Those.
Oh yeah.
You do remember
Oh
that.
yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so just kind of to wrap things up, thank you so much for being here and sharing about your story. Who would be somebody in your life right now? Maybe it's somebody at Admiral, maybe it's somebody that's a CPS worker. Who would you want to give a shout out to that you know that you're saying, right now they're crushing it, they're doing a great job, they're, life is stacked against them, but they're overcoming odds. Yeah. Would there be somebody like that you want to just give a big encouragement to?
Maybe not that life is stacked against them. Admiral, we're in startup mode. We're building a business, and there's 16 employees there, really kind of in startup mode. And man, I work with some top-notch people. So if I were to give a shout out, it'd be really to the team at Admiral.
To that team. That's cool.
Because man, it is, it's cool watching people dig in and just build and create and just think creatively and problem solve to create value for a company.
Yeah. Who pours into you? We're sitting at this table and we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
I like the visual of who do you allow to sit at your table and pour into you?
Man, I probably the two guys that come to mind are my dad and my father-in-law. Both of them in different ways. They're both different individuals personality-wise, but if you were to stack them against each other, both of them have very similar values in life in the way that they care for the people around them. They work hard. They have deep values that drive their decision making. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm way blessed to have my dad and my father-in-law just so close to me, and paving the way for, what I say what I am. That comes across almost like, I don't know, in a negative way, but just paving the way for Bonnie and I and the way to raise kids and
What do you want to be known for?
I want to be known as somebody who deeply loves their family, that was hardworking, but never at the expense of things that are truly important to me. And maybe the way I would maybe distinguish that is trying to figure out what's eternal, what has eternal impact. I see a lot of eternal impact in just being with my kids, pouring into them, trying to become a better father this year than I was last year, and striving to be a better father in the next year than I am currently. And somebody that has core values that drive who I am and what decisions I make in life.
Wow. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate your friendship. Thank you for what you do for CPS workers and
Sure.
for foster children and what you guys are doing at Foster and Restoration. I think that's great, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining with us again this week. Thanks to our title sponsor, Performance Chemical Company. As I always say, don't be sad it's over. Just be glad it happened. We will see everybody next week.
Thank you for joining us. Drop us a line at media@perf-chem.com. Thanks to our title sponsor, Performance Chemical. How you get there matters to us.